I'm Mike, 35M, and I never thought I'd be writing something like this. My family is being torn apart by a situation that keeps getting worse every day. Last year, we lost my mom to cancer. She fought hard for 3 years before passing away at 65. Throughout her illness, my dad, 68M, was incredible. He took care of her day and night, went to every doctor's appointment, managed her medications, and even learned to cook her favorite meals when she was too weak to stand in the kitchen. They were married for 40 years, and seeing him take care of her like that made us all proud. Mom came from a well-off family and was smart with money her whole life. When she passed, she left behind a considerable inheritance, her family home, 2 rental properties, some land upstate, and savings worth about $2.5 million in total. The house is special because it's been in her family for 3 generations. Her grandmother built it, her parents raised her there, and then she and Dad raised us there. Mom always said she wanted it to stay in the family. I have 2 siblings, Tori, 38F, and Miles, 32M. After Mom passed, we all agreed that Dad should keep everything. He'd been an amazing husband, and we thought he deserved to live comfortably. Dad seemed to be handling the loss as well as anyone could expect. He kept himself busy with gardening, Mom's hobby that he took up to feel closer to her, joined a grief support group at church, and started going to the local community center for senior activities. That's where everything started to change. 3 months ago, Dad met Gabby, 66F, at one of the center's game nights. When he first mentioned her, he was excited to tell us that she was his high school girlfriend before he met Mom. Apparently, they dated for about 2 years and were pretty serious. Dad said they even talked about getting married after graduation. But then Gabby's father got a job in California, and her whole family moved away. They tried long distance for a few months but eventually broke up. Dad told us that Gabby got married young in California, had 3 kids, all grown now, and got divorced about 10 years ago. She moved back to our town recently because her sister lives here and she wanted a fresh start. When Dad first told us about reconnecting with Gabby, we were actually happy for him. He seemed more energetic, started taking better care of himself, and smiled more. After seeing him so depressed after Mom's death, it was nice to see him having a friend. But things escalated quickly. Dad and Gabby started spending all their time together. He would skip his regular Sunday dinners with us to take her to restaurants. He talked about her constantly, how she still had the same laugh from high school, how fate must have brought them back together, how she understood him in a way no one else did. 3 months ago, he announced they were dating. It felt way too soon after Mom's death, but we bit our tongues. Dad's an adult, we told ourselves, and he deserves to be happy. Last week, Dad called us for a family meeting, and that's when everything fell apart. He dropped 2 bombshells on us. First, he wants to marry Gabby. Second, he wants to give her half of Mom's inheritance. He said Gabby had a rough divorce and her ex left her with nothing, so she's been struggling financially. Dad talked about helping her start a new life with him, making up for lost time, and getting a second chance at their high school romance. The worst part was when he talked about putting Gabby's name on the deed to our family home. This is the house where Mom grew up, where we grew up, where every holiday and family gathering has been held for decades. Mom inherited it from her parents with the understanding it would stay in the family. She loved that house more than anything and put so much work into maintaining its historical features while modernizing it for our family. When Dad told us his plans, Tori burst into tears. She had always assumed her daughter would grow up in that house like we did. Miles got angry and started arguing with Dad, saying it hadn't even been a year since Mom died. I tried to stay calm and reason with him, pointing out that he barely knew Gabby and that Mom's inheritance was meant for our family. Dad got defensive and angry in a way I've never seen before. He said we were being selfish and trying to control his life. He talked about how he and Gabby were robbed of their chance at happiness in high school, and now they could finally be together. When we still objected, he threatened to cut us out of his will completely and leave everything to Gabby. Later that night, Miles drove past the house and saw Gabby's car in the driveway. We found out she had already moved in without any of us knowing. Dad had given her the master bedroom and packed up all of Mom's remaining clothes and personal items into boxes in the garage. Gabby had already started redecorating, taking down family photos and replacing them with her own art. Tori went to check on Mom's jewelry collection, pieces that had been passed down through generations, and discovered that Gabby had been pressuring Dad to sell it. She told him they could use the money for a cruise or to buy a condo in Florida. These weren't just any pieces of jewelry, they were family heirlooms with stories attached to them. Mom had already promised certain pieces to each of us and her future grandchildren. I feel like we're watching Dad slip away from us. He's acting like a lovesick teenager, making impulsive decisions and dismissing our concerns. When I tried to suggest he wait a while before making such big changes, he accused me of trying to control him like Mom's parents tried to control them in high school. He keeps saying Mom would want him to be happy, but I know Mom wouldn't want her family's legacy given away to someone who just walked back into Dad's life after 50 years. I don't even know what our options are. We looked into legal help, but since everything is in Dad's name now, there's not much we can do to stop him. I'm worried we're going to lose our family home and watch Mom's hard-earned money she saved for her grandchildren's education, go to a virtual stranger. Has anyone dealt with something similar? Is there anything we can do to protect mom's inheritance, or at least the family home? I feel like we're running out of time. Update 1. The situation has gotten so much worse since my last post. I honestly didn't think things could deteriorate this quickly, but here we are. After our confrontation about the inheritance, Dad went full steam ahead with his plans. He proposed to Gabby at a fancy restaurant, gave her mom's diamond ring, the one she wore before her wedding ring, and they're planning to get married next month. But that's just the beginning of this nightmare. Yesterday, my Aunt Carol, mom's sister, called me in tears. After reading my previous post, she got worried and started asking around about Gabby. What she discovered sent chills down my spine. Her best friend Nancy belongs to the same church as Gabby's sister, and apparently, Gabby isn't the sweet high school sweetheart trying to reconnect with her first love. She's more like a professional con artist who specializes in wealthy widowers. According to Nancy, Gabby has been involved with at least 2 other widowers in the past 10 years. The first was a retired doctor in Sacramento. Within 6 months of his wife's death, Gabby had convinced him to change his will, leaving her his beach house and investment portfolio. His children tried to intervene, but before they could do anything legally, he signed over the house to her. A month later, she sold it for $1.2 million and disappeared. The man's kids haven't seen a penny of their inheritance. The second was a business owner in Oregon. Same pattern, she met him shortly after his wife died, love-bombed him with attention and affection, and started pushing for marriage within months. This time, his children managed to stop the wedding, but not before she cleaned out several of his accounts. She claimed it was all a misunderstanding and vanished before they could press charges. When we tried to tell Dad about this, he completely lost it. He accused us of fabricating lies to destroy his happiness. He said we were acting just like his parents and mom's parents back in high school, trying to keep them apart because they thought Gabby wasn't good enough for him. He's convinced himself that their reunion is some kind of divine intervention, a second chance at their true love. We also discovered that Gabby has already taken control of Dad's finances. She convinced him to add her name to his checking account for household expenses. When Tori checked Dad's online banking, she helped him set it up, so she still had access. She found thousands in charges at high-end stores, furniture places, and jewelry shops. Gabby claims it's all for renovating the house and updating the dated decor, meaning mom's carefully chosen furnishings and family antiques. The final straw came 3 days ago. Tori went to visit Dad with her daughter, my niece, Emma. Emma is 12 and was very close to Mom. When they arrived, they found Gabby wearing Mom's wedding ring, the one she wore for 40 years, the one that was supposed to go to Emma on her wedding day. Mom had specifically written a letter to Emma about the ring, explaining its history and how it had been in our family for generations. When Tori asked about the ring, Dad casually said he gave it to Gabby because it was just sitting in a drawer collecting dust. Gabby had the audacity to say she was honoring Mom's memory by wearing it. Emma ran out of the house crying, and Tori hasn't spoken to Dad since. After that incident, we hired a private investigator to look into Gabby's background. We had to know what we were dealing with. The PI's preliminary findings are disturbing. Gabby has changed her legal name twice in the past 15 years. She wasn't widowed from her first marriage as she told Dad, she was divorced after her husband caught her having an affair with his best friend. Her second husband didn't die of natural causes like she claimed. He committed suicide after discovering she had racked up over $200,000 in gambling debts in his name. The PI is still digging, but one thing's clear, Gabby's story about moving back to be near her sister is a lie. Her sister died 3 years ago. The woman Gabby visits and introduces as her sister is actually a friend who's in on her schemes. Dad refuses to hear any of this. When Miles tried to show him the PI's report, Dad ripped it up without reading it. He says Gabby has explained everything to him and that her past is complicated, but we don't know the whole story. He's even started talking about moving to Florida with her, selling both houses, including Mom's family home, and starting fresh. Gabby's been filling his head with ideas about how they're too young to be tied down by family properties and responsibilities. She's convinced him they should travel the world and live life to the fullest, using Mom's inheritance, of course. We're terrified about what might happen if they actually get married. Gabby's already talking about the prenup being unnecessary since they're soulmates. Dad seems willing to sign anything she puts in front of him. I've been trying to reach out to Gabby's previous victims' families, hoping they might have advice or be willing to speak to Dad. So far, no response. I think they're either too traumatized by their experience or have signed NDAs as part of settlements. We're running out of options and time. The wedding is scheduled for next month, and Dad's already talking about surprising Gabby by putting the house in her name as a wedding gift. We have an appointment with a lawyer next week, but I'm not sure what they can do since everything's legally Dad's. How do you protect someone who doesn't want to be protected? Has anyone dealt with a similar situation? Any advice would be appreciated. Update 2. Everything blew up this week in ways I never expected. The PI we hired finally got access to Gabby's sealed records from Nevada, and what he found was explosive. Gabby is still legally married. Her divorce from her third husband, Robert, was never finalized because she abandoned the proceedings halfway through. She's technically committing bigamy by trying to marry Dad. But that's not even the worst part. The PI found her burner phone hidden in the garage while doing surveillance. Gabby had been in regular contact with Robert this whole time. They weren't separated at all, they were working together to scam Dad. The Pi recorded several calls between them where they discussed their plans to drain Dad's accounts and disappear together once they had access to everything. We decided to confront them during their wedding planning dinner. We chose a public place, thinking Gabby would be less likely to make a scene. Miles, Tori, and I met them at the restaurant where Dad had proposed to her. We brought all the evidence, the marriage certificate showing her current marriage to Robert, phone records, bank statements showing suspicious transfers, and statements from her previous victims. Gabby tried to deny everything at first. She claimed the marriage certificate was a forgery and that we were just trying to ruin her happiness. But then we played a recording from her burner phone. It was her talking to Robert, laughing about how easy it was to manipulate the old fool, meaning Dad, and discussing which of Mom's jewelry pieces would be worth the most when they sold them. Dad's face during the recording, I'll never forget it. He looked like he had aged 10 years in those few minutes. Gabby saw his expression and suddenly changed tactics. She broke down crying, claiming she had started this as a scam but had genuinely fallen in love with Dad. She begged him to believe that her feelings were real now, even if they hadn't been at first. That's when Dad quietly pulled out his own phone. Without telling any of us, he had installed security cameras in the house after noticing some of Mom's things going missing. He played a video from last week showing Gabby photographing all of Mom's valuables and sending the pictures to someone while talking about prices. The final nail in the coffin was her calling Mom a stupid old bat for keeping such valuable things locked away in boxes. Gabby's face went from tearful to cold in an instant. She grabbed her purse and tried to leave, but the police officers we had waiting outside stopped her. Yes, we had called them in advance. The Pi advised us that she had a history of becoming violent when confronted. After she was taken away, Dad collapsed in his chair. He looked broken. We took him home and discovered just how much damage Gabby had done. She had already transferred nearly $100,000 from his accounts to hers through multiple small transactions so they wouldn't raise red flags. She had also pawned several pieces of Mom's jewelry, claiming they were family pieces of her own. The next few days were a blur of police statements, bank investigations, and tears. Dad kept apologizing for not listening to us. He was embarrassed and ashamed, especially after learning that Gabby and Robert had pulled this same scam in 3 other states. They would target wealthy widowers, with Gabby playing the role of the returning sweetheart while Robert posed as her supportive ex who gave them his blessing. We found Gabby's notebook hidden in the guest room closet. It contained detailed notes about Dad's routine, his finances, and even his medications. She had been planning to increase his sleeping pill dose once they were married, making him too groggy to notice money transfers. She had already contacted a realtor about selling the house, forging Dad's signature on some preliminary paperwork. The whole thing was so calculated, so cruel. Dad's having a hard time processing how thoroughly he was deceived. He keeps saying he should have known it was too good to be true, that real love doesn't happen that fast or come with so many demands. The police are involved now, and we're working with the bank to recover the stolen money. They've frozen Gabby's accounts, but we're worried she might have transferred some of it to offshore accounts. Robert was arrested trying to cross the Canadian border with some of Mom's jewelry. Update 3. I wanted to give one final update on the whole Gabby situation. The past few months have been a roller coaster, but things are finally settling down. The police investigation revealed that Gabby and Robert had scammed elderly widowers across 5 states, not just 3 as we initially thought. They had this down to a science. Gabby would find targets through grief support groups or community centers, and Robert would handle the money laundering through a network of fake businesses. We managed to recover about $85,000 of the $100,000 Gabby stole from Dad's accounts. The remaining money had been spent on luxury items, which she had already shipped to a storage unit in Canada. The police found most of Mom's jewelry in that same storage unit, along with items stolen from other victims. Apparently, they never sold the jewelry immediately. They waited months or even years to avoid detection. Gabby is facing multiple felony charges: attempted fraud, bigamy, grand theft, and identity theft. She took a plea deal to avoid a longer sentence but still got 8 years. Robert got 12 years because this was his 3rd conviction for fraud. The prosecutor said they found evidence of at least 7 other scams they had pulled together, but many victims were too ashamed to come forward. Dad's doing better now, though he has his bad days. He was devastated to learn that Gabby had been mocking Mom in texts to Robert, calling her the dead competition and joking about redecorating the old Bag's house. Finding out that their high school relationship wasn't even real, Gabby had dated Robert since they were teenagers and had targeted Dad even back then, hit him hard. We've made some changes to prevent anything like this from happening again. Dad transferred all of Mom's inheritance into a family trust that requires 3 signatures, his and 2 of us kids, for any major withdrawals or property sales. He's also put the house in a separate trust for his grandchildren, just like Mom wanted. Mom's jewelry has been properly cataloged and stored in a bank vault. Tori's daughter Emma got Mom's wedding ring back, and Dad wrote her a letter apologizing for giving it away. The ring is now in a special box with Mom's letter to Emma, waiting for her wedding day. The whole experience changed Dad. He's more cautious now, but also more appreciative of the family he has. He's been spending a lot of time with his grandkids, telling them stories about mom and writing down family histories he wants to preserve. He's even started restoring mom's garden, which Gabby had wanted to replace with a hot tub. We did get some closure from an unexpected source. Gabby's daughter reached out to us after the arrest. She hadn't spoken to her mother in years and wanted us to know that Gabby had done the same thing to her father, draining his accounts before running off with Robert when she was just a kid. She shared childhood photos that proved Gabby and Robert had been together since high school. The whole lost love story was completely fabricated. The support from the community has been overwhelming. Other families who were almost victims of Gabby and Robert's scams have come forward, and we've formed a kind of support network. We're working with local senior centers to educate people about romance scams targeting widowers. Looking back, I'm grateful we trusted our instincts and fought to protect mom's legacy. Dad says the whole experience taught him that sometimes the best way to honor someone's memory is to protect what they worked so hard to build. Mom's inheritance will stay in the family, just like she wanted, and maybe that's the silver lining in this whole mess.